So you may have heard that trust in the media to deliver credible, honest, and unbiased news is at an all-time low. Well, back in 2019, there was a state-funded festival held in Perth, Western Australia, built around discussing this very issue, with keynote speakers including Lee Sales from the ABC, Nerelda Jacobs from Channel 10, and Dr. Karl, most commonly known for his talkback radio sessions on Triple J. With Dr. Karl's presentation, What is Truth?, focusing on controversial issues such as concerns around vaccination and 5G technology. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
That dip is not real. It's just painted that way. And in this particular case here, this is called the Hermann grid illusion. And if you look at the middle, you'll see a white dot. And you'll notice in your periphery while you're staring in the middle that there's a little black dot. And then when you swing over to look at the black dot, it vanishes. Option number one. Either I have secret mind powers and I know where you're going to look next and I switch the dots, or there's something going on in your brain that will not let you see the truth or the reality of the world around us. But that is not a spiral. That is a series of circles inside each other. As you go in further, you can see that each of the individual boxes is twisted. Let's get rid of some of the ones on the outside. Let's get rid of some of the ones on the inside and look at just one single circle, and even that circle bothers you because the boxes are tilted. How on earth are you going to find any degree of truth and honesty when even your eyes trick you?
The importance of critical thinking, and maybe something to keep in mind when watching the rest of this presentation.
Now, vaccines do not cause autism.
The claim that vaccines do not cause autism originated from the United States Centre for Disease Control's website, which was formally challenged by the non-profit organization the Informed Consent Action Network by way of a Freedom of Information request in 2019. When this request was denied, the CDC were then taken to federal court and were required to provide proof of claim that vaccines do not cause autism. The peer-reviewed studies they provided totaled only 20 out of the supposed mountain of evidence available and covered a total of 3 vaccine studies: MMR, MMR plus DTaP, and MMR plus thimerosal, a mercury-derived preservative no longer used in childhood vaccines apart from influenza. 13 studies on thimerosal alone, and lastly a study on antigens. At no point in this list were hepatitis A or B, HPV, meningococcal, inactivated polio, influenza, or any of the other CDC recommended childhood vaccines, or their combinations, or multiple doses ever mentioned. Furthermore, not one of these studies were double-blind placebo-controlled, or vaccinated versus unvaccinated, the gold standard when it comes to safety trials for pharmaceuticals. When these trials are performed correctly, one group receives the new vaccine, whilst the other the placebo, a saline injection in this case. Therefore, if the new vaccine has the potential of causing harm, the results will reflect this, as opposed to the placebo group. Many of these studies, however, used another vaccine or an adjuvant as the, quote, placebo, and compared the adverse effects between the two groups. Thus, if the group receiving the vaccine has similar adverse effects as the, quote, placebo group, the data is not reported, and therefore scientific fraud has been committed in this case. And when we say autism, we mean this.
From an official diagnostic perspective, the way that we define autism, we're looking at deficits in 2 areas. The first is social communication and social interaction. And in that area, we require 3 specific symptoms to be present. Symptoms such as no social emotional reciprocity, no non-verbal communication, that means eye contact, for instance, or no development of relationships. The second required area of deficit is the presence of stereotypic, repetitive, restricted behaviors. And these are things like hand flapping, body rocking, insistence on routines being the same. One of the new additions is the presence of a sensory dysregulation. If a child has an inability to sense things correctly, not necessarily hearing things the way we do, that could be classified as a symptom of autism.
Turns out, oh my gee, that in fact, that people with autism cause vaccines. Scientists make vaccines. In fact, it turns out that autism causes vaccines, and wait for it, and it saves babies.
Even if it is proven in future studies that the remaining vaccines also do not cause autism, in what universe would a joke based on his fraudulent overreaching claim be remotely okay? And if he wasn't aware of this important detail, then why is he considered an authority figure on the subject? For more information, go to www.iCanDecide.org, click on White Papers, and download a copy of an introduction to vaccine safety.
And it was so hot that lead turned into a liquid and ran like water, and not just cast iron, but steel chains for ships. And we're talking temperatures of 1400 degrees centigrade, which answers the question of, can wood or can kerosene make a fire that will melt steel with regard to the 9/11 conspiracy in the Twin Towers? And the answer is yes. You just blow enough oxygen at the stupid thing.
He is correct in saying that 1400 degrees is enough to cause structural steel to start melting. However, even if it were possible for the office fires contained within 4 floors to reach such extreme temperatures, this does not explain how 2 commercial airliners managed to bring down a total of 3 towers, not only penetrating the steel-reinforced shell, considering how a flock of birds can cause this amount of damage to an aircraft, but the resulting office fires contained within 4 floors, melting through nearly 200,000 tons of fire-retardant coated structural steel, but simultaneously pulverizing 425,000 cubic yards of concrete into dust, resulting in a perfectly asymmetrical collapse in near freefall speed, a result only possible when almost every structural reinforcement is simultaneously removed with the precision of a planned demolition job. An event that has only occurred 3 times in all recorded history, and all 3 taking place on September 11. For more information, I recommend taking a look at the reports compiled by the 3,000 plus qualified architects and engineers found at www.ae911truth.org, as well as this outstanding documentary.
Luckily, however, in America, we do have 7% of the population who do accept that chocolate milk is made by brown cows. At least they can.
All of this not so subtle use of dumb statistics and American stereotypes to downplay serious societal concerns is no doubt to prime us for his big reveal on how concerns over 5G are baseless, which, judging from what we've seen, I'm sure will contain adequate evidence to back up his claims.
And 40% deny that evolution is real, even though bacteria keep on mutating, and in the cotton fields the insects keep on mutating, and you have to come up with some new pesticides or antibiotics all the time. And 40% deny that radiocarbon dating is accurate, and 51%, even though they have 0 training in astronomy, astrophysics or cosmology, they've got 0 training, they are denying that the Big Bang ever happened.
Once again, using unrelated data in an attempt at taking the piss out of more serious concerns later, as opposed to using facts and figures to debunk these concerns, which, according to his synopsis, appear to be super easily debunked.
Religious hypothesis, and there is only one form of human endeavour that is at the intersection of all of these types of irrationality, and that is Scientology.
What?
I end up in the emergency department in the hospital a little while ago. If you look at my little finger, it doesn't quite look right. And then if you look at it from another angle, it doesn't quite look right. So I had to do something about it. So obviously, the first thing is you have to get a diagnosis. How am I going to get the diagnosis? I've got a whole bunch of different ways. I could, for example, go for Ayurvedic medicine, where they look at my flow of energy and examine my urine and my pulse. Or I could go for reflexology, where they feel my foot to see where the chi energies are following. Or I could even go for bioharmonics, where they run their hands over my body but not touching it and feel the ebbs and the changes going on. No, was I going to use any of these? No, I was going to use a truly ancient form of diagnosis. It goes way back. It is much, much older than traditional Chinese medicine, which, as you know, was invented in 1950 by Mao Zedong because of the sanctions of the West refusing to allow antibiotics and modern medicines in China. This form of ancient diagnostic modality is much, much older. We call it the X-ray. I could rely upon the angels upon my shoulders to look after me. By the way, if you look at a coin and it says 1, 2, 3, 4, that is proof that the angels are looking after you and that they love you. Now, I could have gone for cupping, which a lot of footballers go for, or I could have gone for something called homeopathy. Well, homeopathy is quite amazing. There's a whole bunch of remedies there. The bark rescue remedy is just all over the place, and it works, homeopathy, on the principle that like cures like. So here we go into homeopathy. Like cures like, and you're thinking, well, isn't that kind of like vaccination, where you give a little bit of something to somebody so that it stimulates their immune system? Well, it is alike and similar to vaccination in the same way that homeopathy and vaccination share the letters A, O, and T. That's the only link between vaccination and homeopathy.
Am I the only one who was actually interested in learning the possible similarities between homeopathy and vaccination? For a guy who clearly thinks that allopathic medicine is superior in every way to natural remedies, he could learn a thing or two about selling the idea.
I've got a friend who has a cat. That cat is qualified as a naturopath and a homeopath and an osteopath.
In order to tell this joke, he has now put naturopathy and osteopathy under the umbrella of homeopathy, which, joking or not, are three very different professions. Just something to keep in mind in the following clip.
This bark rescue remedy, it's amazing. Like, it comes as a paste, so you can rub it on your skin. It comes as a little moisturiser, that you can just sort of squirt it into the air. And you can even sort of swallow it. Mate, this homeopathy must be so good, I can just get the medicine and throw it in your general direction, and that will cure you from sunstroke, syphilis, varicose veins, and possibly even bad handwriting.
Personally, I don't claim to know anything about this bar product, but sure, let's tarnish the reputation of three very different medical practices, with roots in many ancient cultures worldwide, by poking fun at one off-the-shelf product. Awesome! That's not the equivalent of trash talking all modern medicine because you still have a headache after taking an aspirin at all.
Who was this guy of the bark rescue remedy? It wasn't this guy. No. Coming from 1711, a document called An Essay on Criticism by Alexander Pope, and here's a picture of Alexander Pope. And he's famous for this saying, which I'm sure most of us have heard, which is that a little learning is a dangerous thing. I never heard the second line until I went looking. And the second line is, drink deep or taste not. Either have a lot or none at all of the Pierian spring. If you drank from this spring, you'd get knowledge. And if you just had a little drink, you'd think, wow, I know so much more than I used to know. I know everything in the world. But as you drank more, you'd realise that what you knew was just a small part of everything you had to know, and you learned a bit of humility.
Irony.
And so the actual full saying is, drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring, because there, a shallow draft, just having a little bit of knowledge, will intoxicate the brain. Hey, somebody told me that 5G phone networks cause brain cancer. Therefore, because I heard it from a human, it must be true.
First, we must take into consideration the fact that wireless industry representatives have admitted on the record that the technology has never been assessed for safety.
How much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
Thank you, Senator. I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, we rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here, so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With industry-funded science favoring just one mechanism by which radiofrequency radiation can cause harm to an individual, while ignoring all other mechanisms with a plethora of independently funded studies showing significant biological harm, while 387 scientists and medical doctors signed the 5G appeal addressed to the EU calling for a halt on all 5G technology, with countless others whose concerns fall on deaf ears. While experts in risk management express serious concerns of unprecedented threats to privacy and national security, telecommunications companies and cell phone manufacturers selling wireless devices with small print warnings to keep the device at least 1 inch away from the body at all times, and insurance agencies refusing to provide cover for injury caused by said wireless devices. Meanwhile, the parliamentary inquiry into 5G was dominated by wireless industry representatives, with clear prejudice against medical professionals and concerned citizens alike, while simultaneously accelerating the rollout and announcing a $9 million taxpayer-funded propaganda campaign to convince said taxpayers of the false claims of 5G safety, 4 months prior to the conclusion of the inquiry. For more information on the subject, check out this short video from We Say No to 5G in Australia. Also, there are plenty of seemingly logical arguments commonly used in debunking concerns over 5G. For example, radiofrequency radiation being lower on the spectrum than visible light, leading to the widely accepted assumption that it is therefore safer than sunlight, even though this concept does not take into consideration the fact that pulsed digital frequencies and power density used in this technology do not occur in nature. Not only that, but the ambient frequencies that all life on this planet have not only evolved to live with, but rely on for basic biological function, has been superimposed by a 24-hour worldwide blanket of artificial electromagnetic radiation, increasing exposure by 10 quintillion times, or as previously mentioned, thermal damage. The only mechanism by which industry-funded science actually studies, despite many of the reported adverse effects having no relation to this mechanism at all. Point being, this doctor overlooked all of these arguments and went straight for a completely unrelated story involving mythological magic water.
The Venn diagram. It is the home of all truth. So what sort of creature is it that comes out at night and invades your home? And the answer is, of course, the cockroach. But ask yourself this, what sort of creature encompasses all of these evil characteristics in one satanic being? Comes out at night, immortal, invades your home. You know what I'm talking about. Santa Claus. He is truly evil, and he has this factory, he calls it, up at the South Pole, where people build stuff. I haven't seen a workplace agreement, you know, I don't know whether there's any asbestos there.
Good God. Who is the target audience here? Earlier on, he was just discussing the events of 9/11, which, considering what we now know, even if the official narrative was somehow grounded in reality, all the death and carnage caused by this event alone is pretty full-on subject matter for a presentation featuring Superman and Santa Claus. You could of course make the argument that given the addition of these characters, he is appealing to a younger audience, in an attempt to combat fake news while they're still young. But either way, he is presenting sloppily researched misinformation to children. Take it from here, press release reporter sellouts.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these things simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And from 1989 to 1991, the fossil fuel companies, and the emails are quite clear, it's all there in the New York Times, you can get 15 downloads for free, you can then read it for 3 hours, and they argued among themselves, saying, oh God, this climate change, this global warming, this greenhouse effect is real, what the heck are we going to do? They say it in their documents, in the emails, it's real, what we're going to do about it. And option one, mate, we're in the energy business, we get the energy by burning fossil fuels. Let's change and become energy companies without burning fossil fuels, but we might not be as wealthy as before. Option number two, business as usual, and let's fund a really well-funded denialist program. And they said that in 1991 in the emails. Let us spend an absolute shirtload of money and fund it. And their three principles are, doubt is our product, doubt is our product, and doubt is our product. So if Professor Gillo says that if you smoke cigarettes, you've got a 20% chance of getting lung cancer, but Professor Karl says it's 21%, 20%, 21%. Look, they disagree with each other. They're both wrong. There's some doubt about the issue. It's not proven. There's still some doubt, right? So they funded this massive denialism program. And you're thinking, how could they possibly do that? Because the fossil fuel companies are big and honest, like big tobacco is honest and big alcohol is honest.
So, he's willing to accept that these multi-billion-dollar industries are not only totally okay with misleading the public when it comes to the negative impacts of their products and services, but are willing to commit scientific fraud and spend millions of dollars on propaganda campaigns to do so. Yet, anyone suggesting that the nearly trillion-dollar industries for telecommunications and pharmaceuticals are doing the exact same thing as we speak are labelled psychologically disturbed, tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theorists. Now, let's take a step back here. Keeping in mind everything we have just covered, let's take a look at the very first segment of his presentation.
Stare at the centre of the screen. 3, 2, 1. Do not take your eyes away from the centre of the screen. Keep staring at the centre of the screen. That's all you have to do. Staring, keep staring. Keep staring.
Okay, I get that looking at this thing causes your vision to warp when you look away, and it's pretty sweet, but given that this kind of strobing imagery can cause a viewer's brain to enter into alpha, a state of altered consciousness in which activity in the left hemisphere, which is the area of the brain associated with logic and reason, decreases, leaving the subject open to suggestibility and therefore less likely to question any of the following information. And out of everything he could have started his presentation with, he chose this. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here considering his extreme lack of knowledge on previous subjects, but you have to admit, this is pretty weird stuff. Can we now agree to stop taking this guy's opinion on these subjects as gospel truth? After all, judging from what we've seen, it would be like relying on a computer programmer for global health policy. Oh, never mind.
Science is a way to not get fooled.
Did I mention Santa Claus and mythological magic water both featured in this?
So thank you very much for having me here, and we're now open for questions. Thank you very much.
You know, for a government and media-funded festival built around restoring trust in said government and media, it sure is giving us a lot of reasons not to. One being, this guy was a keynote speaker.
How did you hurt your hand that badly?
In orthopaedics, there's a 3-month course when you're studying on the way through, we don't learn much. And of that 3 months, 2 weeks is called the fall on the outstretched hand. This arm is joined to Gillo's body solidly at only one point, right here at the middle of her chest. Now you can have your arm back. So everything else flows through. The distal phalanx, the medial phalanx, the proximal phalanx, all of these bones here, the wrist bones, the radius, the...
Hi, good, okay, good, all right then, good, right, okay, good, okay, all right, oh, there he goes again.
That curve to that curve, so it's got a 2/3 length is this curve, and 1/3. Somebody had put something there, and I didn't want to wake anybody up by putting on the lights, I was coming back late, and I tripped over something, and I fell on my hand.
I know! You know, I got it, I got the concept.
Still, at least it can't get any worse.
Please.
Don't start a podcast.
Just don't do it.
Don't do it.
You might feel like it's a productive use of your time right now.
You've probably already got a USB mic and a spare room ready to go.
And your mate Dave's got some interesting opinions.
But we're here to tell you.
He doesn't.
He really doesn't.
He's a f***wit.
We don't need your true crime exclusive, which is just you reading Wikipedia articles to your housemate.
We don't need your minute-by-minute breakdown of every episode of Parks and Rec.
What are you going to do? Send everyone in your contact list a MailChimp newsletter?
And force them to mark you as spam instead of unsubscribing?
Because they're scared to hurt your feelings?
We're in the middle of a pandemic!
Look, it's pretty straightforward.
Just don't start a podcast.
Make some pasta from scratch like everyone else and just shut up.
The greatest gift you can give your fellow human beings right now?
Right now?
Right now. Is to shut the f*** up.
Shut the f*** up.
Come on.
Do it.
Don't start a podcast.
And yet several of these wankers have podcasts. Good job, guys. Good job.